Hello, I'm Michelle.
And I'm Laura, and this is the Parentrepreneurs Club podcast, a fortnightly show to help you navigate the demands of being both a parent and a business owner. We will share lots of practical ideas, hints and tips, and our own and others' experiences of juggling work, family, health and finances. Above all, we want to help you find your purpose, define your identity, and banish any confidence gremlins that might be holding you back from the life you dream of. No matter whether you have children or not, there will be something here for you. Let's get started.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Parentrepreneurs Club podcast. Today, myself and Laura, the founders and faces behind the club, are going to be talking about NLP Drama Triangle. So why we chose this as a subject, bit of background, I did a psychology degree way back when, and along my career in HR, I was fortunate enough to be funded to do an NLP practitioner course. And it really started to sink into me around how people interact and why people respond in certain situations, and really made me think about the specialism of NLP. So this is a technique that we talk about quite heavily in our coaching sessions and within our community. So we thought we'd use today's podcast to bring that to light a little bit more. I thought, Laura, if you want to just give a bit of background about yourself and your journey with NLP and the Drama Triangle before we jump into the topic.
Yeah, definitely. So like you, I've obviously worked in HR for quite a long time, and I also did psychology way back when at A-level. And so I've just always had a keen interest in psychology and people generally. And I think the Drama Triangle, when it was explained to me, just revolutionized my life. It was really one of those things I thought, wow, I never understood how people behave and how I react to other people until that Drama Triangle was explained. And I'll let you talk about, the actual principles of the Drama Triangle for the listeners as well. Go for it, Michelle.
Yeah, so I think really as part of our coaching, we work with individuals and sometimes group, and it's all around improving those communication skills. And on some situations, we see those really unhealthy relationships. And this is where the Drama Triangle comes in. And it's that concept that's really fascinating around why those patterns keep constantly reoccurring and what often leads to that conflict and dysfunction. So I think sometimes without this, we can make quite large assumptions, and sometimes we think it's personality traits. But if we describe the concept, and then hopefully you'll all be able to think about various individuals that we know. So the first concept, the first role in the Drama Triangle, should I say, is the victim. And this is that person who's constantly feeling powerless, oppressed, and quite helpless. The individuals that will always seek the sympathy, and they don't generally take responsibility for their actions, and leads to this sort of cycle of self-pity. So if we think about Disney characters, these are the princesses, the people in the towers, it's me again. And we all know them. And I'm sure, Laura, on a personal level and a professional level, we've all come across several victims in our lives, haven't we?
Absolutely, yeah.
And certainly, I was coaching an individual the other day, and it's not that people are constantly the victim. They're not. They can switch between those roles. And I certainly had a coaching session the other day, and someone was quite heavily in that victim role. The second one is the rescuer. So quite contrasting, really. And this is the person that wants to save people from their problems, and they want to be that person with the magic wand and fix them. So they want to kind of deal with that unhealthy discrepancy and have that good vibe in the office and good vibe in the team. So again, relating it back to sort of the Disney characters, this will be the prince, the Prince Charming, somebody coming in trying to rescue the princess and help the victim in particular. So they generally play against that victim role quite heavily. And then the third one is the persecutor. And this is the person who generally wants to adopt that sort of controlling and quite critical stance towards other people. Can be a little bit vicious sometimes in their approach and attack other people. And sometimes the ones that are pointing the finger at other people who are causing those problems. So not particularly nice individuals sometimes to be around. And again, not always consistently in those roles, but circumstances lead them to that. So it's quite intriguing how they interact with one another. And I know, Laura, from your coaching experience as well, it's quite easy, isn't it, when somebody sort of points out a situation that might have happened in the workplace, we can quickly spot and identify what role a person might have asserted.
Absolutely, yeah. I think, just to emphasize that victim point as well, is that, what we have to remember is that the person who's being the victim, it's giving them something. So, it's this kind of human nature of wanting to be a part of something or a part of a group, that's more powerful than the other emotions. So it's like when people say, oh, I've got an illness or whatever it might be, that becomes their identity.
Yeah.
So, that then gives them permission almost to be a victim of that.
Yeah.
And that's really, where we see it in workplaces, and, and I certainly had friends that do that. So, a classic, when I was in my teens, one of my best friends at the time, she used to, go out with a boyfriend and then split up with that boyfriend, come to me and say, oh, my world's over, it's all horrendous. I had to be the rescuer and say, I know, fine, I'll take you out for the day, we'll do loads of things together. that boyfriend was an awful person, like, you should never have been with him. No. And then she'd get back with the said boyfriend and persecute me because I was clearly wrong about this person completely. And then I fall into that victim state, because then it's, oh, well, why are you persecuting me? I tried to help you.
Absolutely.
So it's that perpetual cycle, that we really struggle to get out of.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you think about it in work, I mean, I when I worked in construction and we had projects, it was so obvious. We'd have the victim, the person, oh, I'm so overworked, I've got so much work to do and I've not got enough resource and I've not got enough time. And they're constantly the person in the HR office or, in the project director office moaning. And then the rescuer to be the one who was sat there on the projects till 7, 8 o'clock at night, dealing with all the tasks and the drama that were going on. And then the persecutors would then be themselves that were blaming others, and generally would be the people potentially coming to the HR office about, having a grievance to instigate them in some form. Not necessarily to that extreme, but they're the people that get that frustration and that, clearly don't play the team line in those situations. And it's quite exhausting. And like you say, you can actually fluctuate those roles themselves, can't you? You can actually quickly be the victim. You can get the resource that you might need, and then you become the rescuer for somebody else in the team. So, it's not to say that you one role for the duration of a project or for the duration of your personality.
Yeah, and there's a really good TED talk, and it's called The Advice Monster, and I think I've said to you about this before. But, if you think of actually as a rescuer, what we get in rescuing people is a dopamine hit.
Yes.
Because we get that feel-good factor. We're like, oh, yeah, we've rescued that person. We've done such a good job of that. So, it's giving us something, and it's really hard to identify when we're doing it because it feels good, or in that the kind of the victim state, it's causing cortisol, which is the opposite of the dopamine, and it's causing stress. So what we're actually doing in giving advice is causing the other person stress, and we don't really understand why.
No, absolutely. So I guess sometimes we recognize these roles, don't we? And one of the things we have to do as coaches, and you guys can do as individuals, is to break free of that drama triangle, and how we actually get to that place. So I guess that's really something it would be kind of good for us to move on to, just so we can kind of understand how we move people out of that victim role and help them progress into different roles within that drama triangle, because otherwise that conflict piece and that kind of saga will continue, so to speak, won't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, this is where it's about recognizing, so that self-awareness of when am I entering into that drama triangle, and making sure I don't get into any of those states. So particularly as coaches, that's where, instead of rescuing people, we will coach through that.
Absolutely.
So, really kind of ask those challenging questions, to make people think differently about forming those answers themselves, rather than giving them an answer.
100%. For me, the rescue is always that person you've got to set the boundaries for. You've got to kind of get them in that headspace of them identifying what those boundaries are, what are they going to do, what they're going to stop doing, and what are they taking on too much for. and for them to sort of, you know, identify that and work on that quite heavily. So that, you know, the learning to support others, but without taking on their problems, which is, that's probably the harder one, isn't it, in some ways?
I think it is, yeah. You know, it really is a hard thing to do, because naturally we all have opinions, and as much as, you know, I mean, the foundation really of NLP and coaching is to remove that judgment and to be curious, you know, and that does take practice. You know, and you know, we find as well, just moving on to the kind of the challenger role. So if you think of removing the persecutor as such and being a challenger in that circumstance, you know, we do this quite often. I know I've said to you, Michelle, before about I'm thinking about doing this, and you go, can I just challenge you on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that's where it's brilliant, because just that language in itself is really revealing to think, actually, yeah, am I, you know, it breaks the state. So it makes me think, oh, actually, yeah, is this what I really want? Am I making the right decision? You know, and then you can form that coaching relationship. So it's, again, that circle that goes round.
Definitely. And sometimes that takes a bit of time, doesn't it, when you're coaching somebody? I mean, I sometimes feel like you can't always, with the persecutor, get there till maybe like the third dialogue with them, because it's quite a bold move to start saying, can I challenge you on that from day one? So I think sometimes that persecutor shift does take a little bit longer in that situation, because you do struggle to do that with people. I mean, we do it to each other because we've got that trust now, and you know, I'm being facetious when I say it sometimes, but genuinely in a coaching situation, it's building that relationship, isn't it? But I think for me as well, it's getting them to sort of understand how they can practice a bit more empathy. And, you know, as we do as coaches, active listening, because persecutors are really bad at shutting down, aren't they? They shut down people's opinions and suggestions, and they start pointing the finger. And what we're trying to get them to do is actually listen to people, get their ideas, get them to think about, you know, instead of on a project shutting them down, do a bit of a dialogue round a table and get their opinions and their views. So that empathy and that listening piece for me is quite important with that persecutor role. But it's how you challenge that is a little bit more kick gloves sometimes, because those characters, when they're in that headspace of being in that persecutor role.
Yeah, exactly. And like you say, you know, a lot of that comes with, you know, we talk about sort of matching people at where they're at and then pacing them and then leading them. Absolutely. So, you know, and that comes from a foundation of having rapport. And exactly as you touched upon there, you know, we've definitely got rapport. So, you know, you can have those more challenging conversations. But with someone that you're just starting out with, it is really just being that listening ear and trying to, you know, get them slowly to a point where they can do it for themselves.
100%.
So, you know, that final victim state, really what you're trying to do is get the victim to be a creator.
Yeah.
So, you know, instead of what they're doing is focusing on the problems that they've got right now, actually being able to think, what outcome do I want? What's the end result that I want? You know, so again, you know, this is the real crux of what we try and do within our NLP coaching. What outcome is it that you want? That's what we focus on in pretty much every conversation that we have, you know, to get people to move forward.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's those two sort of typical NLP things, isn't it? That reframing and that challenging those limited beliefs, because some of it is that people, not all victims, but a large proportion of them will kind of feel that they've just not got that kind of ability to do something, and actually they have got it, but it's easy to say that it's a blame piece, isn't it? So reframing them to think about how they can do something slightly different, or why did it happen in that way. You know, I sometimes say to people, like, just literally, let's flip it on its head and think about the other way, address the situation differently. And when you stop them in the dead of the conversation and do that, it's like, oh yeah, I get that now, I understand why you've challenged me on that. Because the victim conversation will be the person that will sit there and waffle for 10 minutes about why everything's not worked. And I sometimes say, let's just stop there and let's flip it the other way around. And for me, that's that reframing technique, really, to get them to think about it differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, we have as humans, we have a natural kind of feel more for negativity than we do for positivity.
Yeah.
So it's much easier for us to say, well, that didn't work last time, I'll try it again, but it's not worked the second time, so it's definitely not going to work the third time. Because we remember those things far more so than we do the things that went well.
So true. Yeah.
And I think, you know, for victims, that's the world that they live in. It's kind of their expectations are things will go wrong. So it is a big mindset shift. You know, and I certainly know people personally and professionally, you know, that have that almost like it's like a state, you know, they kind of go, oh, you know, the world's heavy on my shoulders, you know, you can physically see it. Because they live in a permanent victim state. So it's a huge thing to be able to shift.
And when you drill down, I mean, we were talking about this before, weren't we? But when you drill down into those victims, typically they are probably aligned to a rescuer, so their partner is probably that rescuer on a personal level as well, so they're probably used to that, and they've always had parents maybe have been the rescuers, you know, oh dad, I'm stranded, I can't get a taxi home, so dad goes and picks them up at midnight, and then they fall into a relationship with somebody who's like, that's fine darling, if you want to do that, that's absolutely fine. And you know, sometimes they've always been that taken on that victim role, and they've always had that rescuer in their personal life as well. So in a work situation, trying to coach them through that into a different mindset is, and you say getting into that kind of more reframing piece and thinking about how they change that mindset is sometimes even a challenge when they've got that personal influence as well. I don't know whether you find that, but I definitely find victims generally have a rescuer in the background, a Prince Charming sat at home as well.
Absolutely. But even, you know, when I think of being a parent as well, it is the hardest thing to not rescue your child.
100%. Yeah.
So, you know, it is so hard when you're emotionally invested with some, you know, with a person, and particularly on that level of, you know, the bond that you have with your child. You know, to be able to get that resilience in them, you have to let them fall a few times, and that is really, really hard.
I was reading something about that the other day as well. When do you get to that point as a parent, and when's right and appropriate? Because some parents do continue that strategy, don't they, all the way through. I've got friends now, and the dads and the parents, well, particularly the dad, sometimes a father and a daughter type relationship, they will still be there for them at the age of 40, picking them up from nights out, and you know, they've probably not always been that slight princess role, which is fine. But yeah, we've obviously got like younger children, and like you say, at the ages that they're at, I mean, mine are 5 and 1.5, and obviously you've got Harrison who's 7. So it's hard, isn't it? Like they are at that position where you naturally do have to rescue them and show them right from wrong, probably more than ever. But yeah, I think I probably am going to have a slight victim in my 5-year-old, the drama queen that she is. If I don't stop that when she's probably getting into those teen years, it's but it's not something you necessarily want to consciously think about, is it, as a parent?
No, it isn't. And I think, you know, the key to all of this really is that none of us are perfect, and there will be times, you know, that we fall into that drama triangle. You know, and certainly one of the biggest realizations and the kind of I suppose the weight relieving thing for me was that it's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
It's just accepting that sometimes it's going to be uncomfortable. Sometimes you are going to make mistakes still. We're work in progress. But the real key to it is actually reflecting on that, you know, and embracing it and saying, okay, well, this is uncomfortable, but how do we move forward from it, or how do we learn from this?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is generally about that kind of conflict piece, isn't it? And you know, that kind of breakdown in communication. Whereas I think when there's bigger emotional dramas that happen in life, you tend to sort of recall on that sort of CBT, like parent-child situation. And I guess you can kind of recall some of that theory back to maybe the rescuer and the victim. But that is a lot bigger stuff, you know, a lot bigger circumstantial events that can happen. But in a way, the roles that you adopt in those sorts of similar situations can be quite similar. And I know a drama that's happened in a quite significant life event that happened to me going back about 7 years ago. And sort of a CBT therapist had said to me, literally one session, oh yeah, you're asserting the parent mode, and instantly I thought, oh god, I'm a rescuer, I'm the rescuer, and the person that I was trying to sort was the victim. And I think we've probably continued on that spirit for 7 years. So that piece, that role can sort of continue, can't it, as best as we work on that. And as self-assured I am about my NLP techniques and the role that I want to assert in those conflicts and in those challenges that we have, I think 9 times out of 10 I'll become that rescuer, may become that victim. But I definitely work on that piece around, how am I going to set my boundaries? What am I going to stop doing? Take that responsibility myself to stop being that rescuer time and time again. So it helps from a work perspective and a personal dynamic, doesn't it, as well, to be so conscious of this.
It does. And and I remember last weekend I messaged you because I said the weather had been so terrible. Like, I felt absolutely dreadful. And just I don't really know what it was, maybe a hormone imbalance, but just a number of things that I just thought, I know I'm being a victim right now. And I'm punishing myself because knowing everything that I do about coaching, I should be able to get out of this.
I wasn't to your rescue though, Laura, was I? I just became
You didn't rescue me at all, no.
I equally became a victim and said, yes, I feel like that too, Laura.
Yeah. And that's it. And that's like, just embracing life sometimes. So yeah, I think exactly as you said, when people have gone through a trauma or there's much bigger things, then clearly there's a much bigger problem. But on the odd day when we know we're being a victim, and actually that's okay, just wait till the sun shines tomorrow.
Exactly. Yeah, my advice is always just to approach that conflict with an open mind, and just that willingness to communicate assertively. Because I think if you can do that, if you can just be that person that's confident in that, then you kind of embrace the notion that you're going to grow and learn from that situation. As cliche as that might sound, but that's kind of my point on it. It's just being a practice of self-awareness more than anything, isn't it? And just trying to break free from the triangle, it's going to take a bit of time, it's going to take a bit of effort. And we know that because the energy we put into our coachees to get them out of those situations, it's not a wave the magic wand, have one session and it's resolved. But I think when you can break that and try and spotlight some of those behaviours and get them into that place where, as I say, a persecutor might become more empathetic, or a rescuer might set some boundaries, or a victim might just start to reframe things and actually start to really get those healthy relationships for people. And I've certainly got one person I can think of, and they've just gone, it's really made a difference. And I don't think I've actually ever said that they are a victim out loud in a coaching session. We've just kind of talked about the principles of what they're doing and that reframing technique. So I think sometimes again, you don't necessarily put a name to the triangle if you don't need to.
Yeah, and that's it. And actually, if you're kind of labeling someone, as a victim or whatever, then I guess that's kind of persecuting them in their way as well. So, it is a conscious effort of trying to just do it in a subtle way, and that is a real benefit of coaching. And for listeners, what I would say is you try and get someone who will give you that coaching advice rather than just either agreeing with you, or persecuting you for your choices. Surround yourself with the right people, or invest in some coaching.
100%. And I think it's just understanding those communication patterns, isn't it? Just that's the first step, and that'll help with creating sort of a harmonious relationship in all aspects of life, whether it's work, personal, when you're in business, like you say, even kids. I think, is there anything else you want to cover off, Laura? I think hopefully people have got some insight into the drama triangle.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we'd love to get feedback. We say this every episode. If there's anything that you particularly relate to or want us to expand on, then please do send us an email, hello@parentrepreneursclub.com. or drop us a message on our social media feeds. We'll put all the posts, put all the links in the post on Spotify and everywhere else.
Yeah. And if you found this episode helpful, please share with family and friends, because the many likes and shares we get, that's fantastic for us. And stay tuned, and we'll have some more thought-provoking topics coming forward in the future.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. We rely heavily on word of mouth, so if you found value in this episode, please hit subscribe and share it with family and friends. If you'd like to find out a bit more about us, you can find us on our Facebook group, Parentrepreneurs Club, or alternatively on Instagram, Parentrepreneurs_Club. We hope you have a great week, and we look forward to talking to you next time.